Before we dig into technologies that we can carry out in the modern data center, thanks to our nugget, as well as important verification commands we're going to want to know to run once we make that management connection. Now, for those of you coming from the iOS world, this will be no surprise. We can make a console port connection to the Nexus, let's say 7000 switch. Notice it's a serial RJ45 connection that we're going to make to the console port that's located on the supervisor engine. Yeah, so this is our soup engine inside the 7000 series chassis. What are the settings for our favorite terminal application of choice? Well, it's going to be 9600 bits per second, 8 data bits, no parity, 1 stop bit, and no flow control. These are the settings that we're going to make sure are inside our terminal app of choice. We could use Hyper-Terminal built into Windows, but most these days prefer to utilize something like Secure CRT or TerraTerm. Now, when you power on the Nexus 7000 series, or any Nexus for that matter, initially you make this console connection and there's not going to be a configuration. So the device kind of freaks out a little bit and presents you with a basic system configuration dialog. This is called the setup utility, or for those of us that have been around Cisco for a while, we tend to call it the setup script. Notice this device is asking us, would we like to enter the basic configuration dialog? We can say no and go right to the command prompt, or we can go ahead and say yes and begin this setup script. And it will ask us a series of questions like, do we want to enforce secure password standard? I just hit the carriage return, so as a result of that, it accepts the default yes here. So yes, we are going to enforce secure password standard. It says, do you want to create another login account? I'll go ahead and say yes here, and I'll create the John S. login account. Now, the password is going to have to meet secure password standards of this particular device. So we can quickly get to the end of the script. We'll learn how to configure all of this stuff manually, right, as we go through this course. So let's see, default switch port trunk mode. Oh, that's fine. I'll just say on, no, deny, no. Configure the default zone mode. This is for storage area networking capabilities on the device. All right, and here we are at the end. Notice, would we like to edit the configuration that we have just applied to this device with the script? We can the setup keyword. Now, please remember, if you have a Nexus 7000 series and you are using the Soup Engine 1, then you have over here on the right-hand side of your supervisor engine, you have the Connectivity Management Processor port, or the CMP. The CMP was an interesting concept, and it's kind of curious that Cisco abandoned this concept. Have your dedicated operating system running here for complete and total out-of-band management of the device. You could connect to this particular port and you could initiate a reset of the entire Nexus device, and you wouldn't lose a connection while the entire Nexus device is rebooting. So you talk about true out-of-band management. This is all possible, of course, because again, this connectivity management processor has a dedicated operating system, dedicated resources. It even has its own LEDs that are surrounding this particular port to give you information about its health. As far as user accounts go, it has its own local authentication that it can do so that you can set up connectivity management processor accounts and you can access those accounts for managing the system. Once again, I must remind you, this is on the Soup Engine 1 and the Soup Engine 2A, and 2 from Cisco Systems does not possess such a capability. Now, an obvious question becomes, how in the world would you connect to the connectivity management processor in order to manage that particular component? Well, you use the attach privilege mode command. Notice I don't have a CMP, so none is listed here. But if you did have a CMP on your particular Nexus 7000, it would be listed. So you would say attach CMP for connectivity management processor. You would then be prompted for a login. By default, your global admin accounts from your default virtual you have both client and server capabilities on the Nexus. And as you might guess, both version 4 and version 6 are supported. Now, when you're in the CMP and you want to control these remote access behaviors, the appropriate commands are going to be SSH server and then enable. This would enable SSH capabilities if someone disabled them. Same with Telnet. You would do Telnet and then the server keyword, and then the keyword enable in order to enable that capability in the CMP. Now, the Nexus borrows a concept from the Layer 3 MPLS VPN, and that is the concept of a virtual routing and forwarding table. A virtual routing and forwarding table is a set of routing structures that can be applied to an interface to virtualize the interface. That's right, the interface can have multiple routing tables, multiple forwarding information bases, even multiple routing protocol configurations. You could have an interface participating for customer A, let's say, and for customer separate routing tables, separate routing protocols for each of these customers. So this is an amazing virtualization capability that Cisco takes advantage of for the Nexus. By default, they have 2 VRFs in place for you on your Nexus device, and that is the default VRF and the management VRF. So we have this wonderful automatic partitioning of management traffic through the use of its own virtual routing and forwarding table. So, as a great way to partition the management traffic, sure enough, Cisco did something brilliant with the management interface. We know there's a management interface on our Nexus devices, like, for instance, the 5500 series, and this management interface is placed in the management VRF. Now, it's very important to keep this concept in mind when you're verifying reach. In order to test our connectivity for management purposes, our full command would be ping, the address, and then VRF, and in this case, our management VRF is specified. Now, another great feature that's been a long time in coming from Cisco with their software is the in-service software upgrade. This is a capability that allows us to upgrade software, and we know we're going to be doing that periodically with our Cisco equipment. And the key is it's non-disruptive. That's right, that data plane on our device can continue forwarding traffic during the upgrade process. Now, you're not really responsible for performing this process in the certification environment, but to make this nugget really complete for you, I wanted to go ahead and give you an overview of the steps that you would carry out on like the 5000 series. Step one is obviously you're going to download the appropriate software from Cisco.com. Remember, they have added the Nexus software to things like the feature navigator. So if you want to find the particular operating system that would be be right for you, just do a cisco.com/go/FN for Feature Navigator, and you can help find the right software for your particular environment. Once you've got it downloaded, you're going to use something like TFTP to go ahead and copy the kickstart and the system image to the boot flash that is located on your 5000 series device. Now, I presume you did your homework with the Feature Navigator, but just to be sure, you can go ahead and run a command on your Nexus 5000 called show incompatibility. Yeah, this is awesome. And this will go ahead and report to you any particular features that are not going to be compatible with your current image that you were trying to implement on the 5000 series. And another great pre-upgrade command that you can issue is show install all impact. This command is going to allow you literally to identify the impact that your upgrade is going to have. This excellent command is going to literally verify the images that you're about to apply to the device, and most importantly, ensure that they're going to work seamlessly with this in-service upgrade process. At this point, you should be feeling very confident, and you'll go ahead and issue the install all command in order to begin the actual installation. Once the installation is done, verification is going to be with a show command. I'm sure you're not surprised. We're going to do show install all status. And this is going to allow us to verify that this installation process has indeed succeeded as we planned. Now, the supervisor engine does a remarkable job of separating the traffic into different planes of operation. Then we can enact certain types of controls on that various traffic. The supervisor engine identifies data plane traffic. Sure, the packets that are coursing through our data center in order to go ahead and move information from place to place. But then we have management plane traffic. A great example here would be something like simple network management protocol, and also packets related to the command line interface. Then there's the control plane, and these are EP. Control plane policing allows us to go in and literally set limits on interactivity, on the number of packets, for instance, coming in ingress or egress to the control plane. Now, something that might surprise you is the fact that Cisco is so concerned about this that they actually have a default control plane policing policy that they apply to the Nexus device. So we have a default protection policy. That's how important this is. In fact, during the setup script, it's asked of you whether you want to set a strict default COP policy, a moderate policy, a lenient policy, or if you want absolutely no control plane policing in place whatsoever. As you might guess, the stricter our policy, the less forgiving the Nexus is going to be of high rates of incoming control plane traffic. Now, in the predecessor course to this one, the Introducing Cisco Data Center Networking course, we took a look at a lot of great key CLI commands that we would use in the Nexus environment. Obviously, I don't want to repeat those here. Let me just give you a few that were not mentioned in that initial course. The where command. What a great way to quickly see in what mode, in what virtual device context, and in what user account you are logged in. So if you're a bit lost at the command line and you want to figure out just who and where you are, experiment with the where command. Now, when you do a show run now in the Nexus environment, you can specify particular features. For instance, I could say show run IPQoS in order to see just those particular parameters that are enacted for QoS on the device. By the way, you want to see all of them, including those that wouldn't normally show up because they are default settings? Just follow it up with the all keyword. What an important nugget. We took a look at the various management connections that we have capable in the Nexus line. We talked about that setup script, which we will default to if we are on a device that has no configuration. We talked about the in-service software upgrade and control plane policing possibilities on our Nexus line. And we wrapped up taking a look at some important commands that I really didn't point out to you in our first CCNA data series here at CBT Nuggets. I sincerely hope that this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.